Now we're going to move on to the next session, and it's the Setting the Context session, and it's going to be started by Professor Nyarko, and he's our leader here at the NYU Africa House, and he's here with us in the building. So please put your hands together for him, clap for him as he comes towards the stage.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Thank you all for being here. What I think I'm going to do first is just to talk, tell you a little bit about myself, why I'm here, and in particular, when I got the invitation to speak here, it just brought back great memories of when I, too, was a student, an African student here. This was a very, very, very long time ago, but it still brings back lots of joy as I think about it. And so I just wanted to communicate a few things, a few of the things I've learned over the years, what I did, what I should have done, what I didn't do, and also to encourage you to stay engaged. I think I have slightly different views about the role of all of you who are students here, whether to go back, how to go back, in what capacity. So I'm going to share some of those things with you. And at the very end, are there any economists here in the room by any chance? People in the social sciences? Okay, all right. So I'll flip through some of the slides just to give you a little bit of a sense of, what I do as an academic, okay? So, I got here many years ago. I was from Ghana, raised in Ghana. Is the Ghanaians here? All right, okay. I just saying. Oh, yeah, okay, Sana, yeah. Renee was just talking a lot about Ghana. So I went to a high school in a very underprivileged area, a place where there was no electricity, no water, really bad school. But they gave me a wonderful education, okay? This was in the old days when we had Form 1 to Form 5. Some of you may remember that, okay, in the colonial system. And then I remember finishing from this very deprived secondary school, and Renee was talking about this school called Achimota. And so I remember doing my A-levels and the exam to get into Achimota. And I was one arrogant bastard at that time, and so you're supposed to put in 3 different choices, and I put in Achimota, 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 okay? Stupid. Fortunately, I got in. I was there for 2 years. It was a bit of a culture shock for me. One of the things many of you probably know in Africa, there are really 2 Africas. There's Africa in the rural areas, and there's Africa in the cities. Africa in the cities does not look that different from the United States. It's about the same. You go into the rural areas, they still believe in the traditional systems. Every Tuesday, you can't go to the farm because the gods don't allow it. The chiefs are all so important. And just so you all know, I recently became one of the chiefs in my little tiny hometown. And so every 6 weeks, there's something called Akweside. And so I go back. Tonight, I'm leaving for Ghana to go and celebrate Akweside. And this is a bit of a digression, but I'm trying to get you guys interested in Africa. And I'm an economics professor. I've got my PhD, and I think somebody introduced me as a leader or something. But every 6 weeks, I try to go back to pour libation on these stools. So this is the Ashanti. And when you go into this room, they have these stools of all the chiefs from the first chief. And the first chief of my town, which is Kumu. Do you guys know Kumu? Close to Kumasi? Okay, all right. So I'm from Kumu, okay? So Kumu was one of the founding states, the Ashanti Empire, all that stuff. In any event, 300 years ago was the first chief of Kumu. He has a stool. He died, okay? And he has a stool that represented him. Then the next chief, then the next chief, then the next chief, up until today. And so every 6 weeks, we go there for Akweside. We take schnapps, and we pour libation on each of these stools. 300 years ago, it still goes on. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. okay? This is our tradition. This is our culture. We all need to celebrate that, okay? In any event, this is just to whet your appetite a little bit for Africa, okay? So Achimota went to the University of Ghana, Legon, when Rawlings was having his coup d'etat and all of that. And so I just snuck in right before they closed the universities down. If I had gone a year later, you guys would not be seeing me here, okay? So I just snuck in, did the university for 2.5 years, and then Rawlings just closed down all of the university system for several years. I applied to graduate schools. This was the time before internet. I had no idea what I was doing, okay? I went into the, there was something called the US Information System Service. They have this colonial building. You guys in Accra, you may know it. They're buildings on stilts, okay? Let me just entertain you guys. Do you know why the buildings are on stilts? Okay? There's a disease called malaria. Why is it called malaria? Because the Europeans thought that malaria comes from bad air from the ground, okay? Malaria, bad air. And so when the British were coming in there, they put their buildings up on stilts so they wouldn't smell the bad air. And so all of old Accra have buildings on stilts because of malaria, okay? They didn't know it was caused by mosquito. Okay, till much later. Anyway, I go into the US Information Service, which is a building on stilts. I'm reading through schools. I don't know what a good school is or bad school is, so I'm randomly applying to schools, okay? One school, and only one school decided to admit me. That was Cornell University, okay? And so thank God for them. Otherwise, again, you guys would not be talking to me right now, okay? So as a, you know, I came from the village. I went with one bag, one suitcase, and I packed in the suitcase presents. That's all I had, okay? I showed up at the Cornell campus with thick wool pants, because that's what the white people were all wearing, okay? And this was in the middle of summer, okay? So obviously I got there and I was sweating and everything. I first landed at JFK, and I'm going to Ithaca, New York. I get out of the airport, and I'm hailing a taxi. Hey, I'm going to Ithaca. Do you know where Ithaca is? Nobody has a clue. So this poor black African guy is walking up and down. Then some dude comes and says, hey, buddy, come here. You're going to Ithaca, right? Let me look at your ticket. So there's a second ticket, which takes me from JFK to Ithaca. I thought Ithaca was in New York. I'm in New York, JFK, so I get a taxi. Stupid. Anyway, so I go and get my PhD. It's in Ithaca, New York, and one of the blessings was that Ithaca is an extremely boring place. There is nothing to do in Ithaca. And so I finished my undergraduate in that 2.5 years. I go to Ithaca, and I have nothing to do. So 4 years later, I actually got my PhD, which is a great thing. Okay, so I finished the PhD in 4 years. Went to Brown University for a couple of years. I was then recruited as a professor here at NYU, and it's been fantastic here. NYU has been amazing, okay? I've been a professor for many years since I got here from Brown. And right now, if you roll the clock forward, I am really engaged in Ghana, okay? I have a center in my hometown. It's a building there. I do my research there. I've set up a museum complex. So I got some money from the World Bank. We've got just the heritage, the chiefs and all of that. I put up 3 buildings there. I have a suite of offices at the University of Ghana, Legon, okay? I'm employing a lot of people in Ghana. I have a staff of about, in Kumu, maybe 20 people, all of them earning, relative to Ghana standards, really high wages. Another 7 or 8 at the University of Ghana. These are employees, okay? Why am I saying all of this? I'm able to engage in Ghana, in Africa, as an NYU economics professor. If you think of what economics professors do, it's all this mathematical stuff, right? We write equations. I mean, if I get to it, I'll show you some of this stuff here, okay? But despite that, and perhaps because I'm part of New York University, I've been given the bandwidth, the space, the encouragement, and the grants to be able to go to Ghana, put up buildings, museums, etc., okay? What is the point I'm trying to make here, okay? One of the things I always hate when I'm talking to African students is the following. They'll come to me. I had a student, NYU Abu Dhabi. We have another campus there. I teach there in the spring. Really smart student, really cares. And he comes up to me and he says, yeah, professor, I'm about to graduate. I really need to go back home. I was raised in a refugee camp. I have to go back and help the people in the refugee camp. Okay? He's about to go. Then I say to him, young man, sit down. Let me tell you something. There are a lot of people with a big heart. They're working already in his home country in the refugee camps. You going there to be another person with a big heart and nothing but a big heart is not going to help. Okay? It's not going to help. Instead, go and get yourself a big fat job, okay? Go make tons of money, and then go back with the money and change things, okay? Don't think for a second, there are 1.4 billion people in Africa. They're all working, right? They're all doing something. They're all trying to help these refugee camps, okay? There is something, I always hear the term brain drain, okay? As if it's some bad thing that's happening. And usually they're criticizing Africans, okay? Another story. The first time I got to NYU, I show up in the department here. Let me mention his name. He's deceased. He was one of the famous development economists, Touray. And he comes, he had written a textbook in development economics. And he says, you, come here. I was working in economic theory, mathematics. And he says to me, why is an African working in economic theory? I should be doing work back in Ghana. You understand? He was essentially saying I should stop being a professor, go back to Ghana, and go and help the people there. Okay? Huge mistake. Why? Number one, it's insulting. Are you trying to tell me that I can't be a famous professor? And number two, it makes no sense. We have professors in Ghana, they're struggling. And the best thing I can do is to stay here and help those people have interactions back and forth. You guys are a very, very special group of people, okay? You've been blessed, you've come to North America, and you've got special skills, special contacts, special ways of looking at things, okay? Use it to your advantage. Don't let anybody tell you you have to go to Africa because Africa is poor, right? The people working there already. Use your skills here, make your skills as great as possible, then you go. If you look at the landscape of Africa, you will find that people like you, people who've come here and are going back and forth, are transforming the Africa, okay? It's a constant circulation. There's no such thing as a brain drain. The brain drain is sort of like a static concept. You take a picture of all the people who are in the United States today and say, hey, look at all those Africans who are in the United States today. That's a large number, very bad. The number of nurses in Africa is tiny. The number of nurses in the United States or the UK is very large. Shame on all of you guys. You should be going back to help. That's nonsense, okay? It's nonsense for several reasons. Number one, if you take nurses, many nurses exist in Ghana today with no jobs. There are no jobs there. What's the point somebody who has a nursing degree here going back there, right? Number two, a lot of people are going back and forth. I'm one of them, okay? So I'm part of the circulation. If you take that snapshot at a time when I'm in Ghana, hey, I'm a Ghanaian, good. You take the snapshot when I'm teaching a class here, I'm brain drained, bad. It's nonsense. You look at all the remittances of people like you sending money back to Africa. Great. Then look at all the industries that are being produced there. Ghana has Ashesi University. You all know of Ashesi University, right? So this is a man who was Patrick Awell was working at Microsoft back in the day, made a bit of money, and decided he's going to go back and then help his country, right? So he was part of the brain drain. He got an idea. He got some money from Microsoft in the early days. He's gone back and he's now producing one of Africa's best undergraduate colleges based on the model of Swarthmore. Isn't that a victory? Isn't that a good thing? If he had left early and gone back to help there, what would he have done? What's the point? There are 1.4 billion Africans now on the continent. One additional person there, what are they going to do? But you are here, you've got the insight, and it's amazing. You guys have seen Ashesi University, right? It's a beautiful campus. What is he doing? He's talking to all the people here. He gets a lot of funding from MasterCard Foundation. They're pouring millions into his university. They're building this wonderful university here. He couldn't have done that if he had gone immediately. Okay? So you go all across Accra, all across Addis. You see all these people who are going back and forth, companies, laundromats, car service things. It's just, there's a whole energy there caused by people like you. So if anybody ever tells you, okay, bad, shame on you, you're part of the brain drain, you just look at them politely, but continue doing your own stuff, okay? Just promise me all that. You guys are special. You've got something special that the folks over there don't have. Use it, okay? The other thing, too, I want to warn is we're all human beings. Realize something, okay? The folks back in Ghana, the folks back in Nigeria, the folks back in Ethiopia, there are a large number of people. Some will welcome you, some will be envious of you, okay? Just know that. You're in a privileged position. You know, even the way you talk, your swagger, they're jealous, okay? And that's okay. You got lucky, right? Okay? But just understand that. In my home country, Ghana, I left when Rawlings was, you know, he had taken over there's the big man in Ghana, taken over the country, and the economy was sinking. A lot of Ghanaians left at that time. Huge numbers left. I was part of that wave. When civilian administration came in, two things happened. All of Rawlings' party realized that, hey, all these guys who are abroad, if we allow them to vote, we're going to lose the elections, because the elections are almost 50-50, okay? In addition, those people who are in the country just said, hey, if we allow those people who are abroad to get the top governmental positions, there'll be none for us. And so they passed a law in Ghana which said, essentially, if you're a dual citizen, which is what most of you will become after a while, you can't have certain positions in Ghana. All the top managerial positions in the country, forbidden, okay? We have some statistics which show that if you, this is economics now, if you allow for the same education level, people in the diaspora, conditional on that education level, actually earn less than the locals, okay? So there's some data that we're getting there. And it makes sense, right? The people there have the contacts, the connections, the friends, all of that, okay? So just know that. But still, be happy, because since you are here, your education level is much higher than it might have been if you had stayed there anyway, okay? And so you're better off. Plus, a lot of the folks there are a little bit envious of you anyway, so enjoy it, okay? There's nothing bad about that, okay? So again, the one message I want to give to all of you is cherish what you have right now. You're very, very important. Don't let anybody tell you that being a student here is a bad thing. Stay in the United States is a bad thing. Eventually, you're going to circulate, okay? Find a place that's good for you, as I found at NYU, okay? Find that place for yourself and get that place to help you circulate. It's a lot of joy, okay? It's a lot of joy. You feel like you're giving back. I go back to my home area. You give somebody $10, and this huge, big smile comes on their face, okay? There's one person, the eyes weren't working, you know, cataracts or something. It cost $300 for the operation. He's just sad. He's about to go blind. I can give him $300. He gets the operation. He thinks I'm God, okay? I mean, it's just wonderful. These are people who would otherwise not be able to get basic care, and which, for most of you, eventually, when you become NYU professors, you'll be able to afford, okay? And so, again, you guys are in a good position. Cherish it. Okay. One other thing I'll say, too, is be careful of the following, okay? Just as you have a cherished position here, okay? Be careful on taking on fights which are not your fight, okay? Do what you can. Play your position on the soccer field, okay? There's some things it's not your fight, and there's some things you gotta allow the local situation to solve. One of them is corruption, okay? And so usually when I'm talking to my folks here in the United States, everything is corruption. The big guys are bad. If only we can get rid of the leader of the country, everything will be great. So corruption, corruption, corruption. Corruption is bad, okay? But it's much more subtle than you think. And it's not our fight, or it's not our fight alone, okay? There's a whole nation out there, and the corruption, I tell you, I see it myself. It permeates the entire society. Everybody. Everybody, of course, will be accusing the top man, okay? I will see somebody in between, okay, an intermediate person who has spent a year or two complaining to me about the top person. Now this person has taken a bribe, okay? I go and confront that person, and he's giving me some long, twisted story as to why this bribe is different from the bribe of other people and this and that. And it permeates everything, okay? Our police, right? You're walking on the streets. The little taxis. I take taxis every now and then because I want to go local, right? And the taxi driver, there'll be a policeman there, have to give him the license with like 5 CDs in it, 10 CDs. You just give it to him. The guy is looking around. Okay, have a good day, okay? And this is the police, relatively low down, okay? All right, they're not the higher ups, and so it's all across the society. So if you come in from the United States, corruption is bad, you know, I'm going there, you got a job, you've got an income, you're not starving, okay? Your brothers and sisters are not living off of the corruption. Mellow out a little bit, okay? And if you're going to do something, do it as part of a team, part of a movement, part of a political party. Don't think that because you're in America, and America here, quote unquote, everything works. It doesn't. But don't think that because you're here, you should just go back and then fight that fight. It's not your fight. It's our fight. We're going to go there and help them. But it has to be a fight that takes place over there. Don't think for a second because you come to the United States, you're going to go with your flag and your horse and you're going to, you know, just charge, you know, kill all these bad people. Oh, I killed you, I killed you. It doesn't work like that, okay? So just chill out, relax, okay? My philosophy of life right now is I'm trying to go to Ghana and I want to do things. I've got a museum project. I want to complete that thing. We're trying to industrialize this Kumo area. The Kumo area is 3% of the landmass of Ghana. Okay, huge amounts of land. Okay, so if we can find a way to increase the productivity of these farmers, maybe at this stage I'll just put my slides up. How much time do I have? 8 minutes. Okay. I'm just going to show you a little bit about what I do. Okay. So again, I'm an economics professor. I started off really theoretical, okay? I do equations and all that stuff that you guys hate about economics, okay? But I've been able through NYU to actually go back and forth every 6 weeks sometimes for Akwesideh to pour the libation on the stools, okay? So this is some of the work I'm doing. Commodity exchanges, I'm just gonna flip through all of this, okay? This is usually an economics talk. So Ghana started a commodity exchange. A commodity exchange is a centralized market where people buy and sell things. Think of the Chicago Board of Trade, New York Stock Exchange for stocks. Africa doesn't have that, okay? So one of the things I did, we did some research there. We figured out Ghana needs one of those things. I went to the Ghana cabinet. I spoke to the ministers, the senior ministers, and I got them actually to create a commodity exchange, okay? So this is something that in my own tiny sphere in economics, I'm staying on my part of the soccer field, I've done something I'm very, very proud of, okay? All of you in your own respective fields, be a star in that field and then go and score some goals for your country, okay? All right, so this is the Ghana Commodity Exchange. This is all economic stuff. This is storage in the rural areas, okay? This is where they store their maize, all right? This is the land in the rural areas, okay? Where they're doing their planting. Shots of rural areas. I'm just going to focus on the pictures, okay? Again, all of this is the rural area. You can see on the top left there, I go there, I'm looking for maize. I'll have a conversation with people, and they say, okay, give me about an hour. So I'm sitting there, and then out from the bush comes people with maize on their heads, bringing it onto the roadside, okay? As I said, there are two Africas. There's Africa in the city, and there's Africa in the rural areas. And if you stay only in the cities, you won't even know that this thing exists, okay? All right, I could tell you about the many languages people speak, the lack of education that they have, kinds of crops that they grow. This is a picture, one of the pictures I'm proud of. So this is, I was opening up the Ghana Commodity Exchange. So we got the president of Ghana to show up there and ring the opening bell, okay? So again, what is the point? I'm an economist. What do economists do? We do markets, we do trading. I'm here in New York, but I've done something in Ghana, okay? All of you should do the same thing, okay? Whatever it is that you're doing, become an expert in it. Become great in it, okay? And then for that little thing or for that particular thing, go back to your home country, do it there, all right? So anyway, this is a proud moment for me. Those of you who know randomized controlled trials, that's what we do. This is all economics. More of the commodity exchange. I'm just going to show you some pretty pictures. Okay? There are very few weighing scales there. Okay? And here's a neat thing. There are many women here. I love this story. So a lot of the farmers are men. Okay? They do the actual farming. A lot of the traders, the people who buy the maize, are women. They call them Ashanti women. They're not only from Ashanti. The women are rich, okay? The men are complaining that the women are cheating them on their maize. They say that, see, there are no weighing scales. And so you get a sack like that, and the women will come and say, oh, this is not fun. They put their hand there and let you pour some more maize on top of it so that it's bigger than can be. You understand? So you get a bag of maize, should be 150 kg. It'll end up being 180 kg. All of the farmers are complaining about the women. I love it. It's just excellent, okay? The women are the ones, so most of the farmers are broke, okay? At the beginning of the season, they have no money to plant. So they have to go to the quote-unquote traders for money. All of the traders are women. Isn't that great? I mean, it's just, I love it. It's a beautiful story, okay? All right, so anyway, that's a moisture meter to check that there's no, that is dry enough. I'm just giving you a feel for what I do. This is a warehouse in Kumasi, commodity exchange again. If it was economics, I'll tell you about farmers, brokers, school feeding system. This is probably too much economics now, and I probably have only a few minutes. So let me stop here. This is Kumo. I've started a mini commodity exchange in the village. So you don't have to go to the capital. And this is all of this here, this is my building. I put up this building with grant money in the middle of a village, okay? This is trading going on in my center, in Kumu, okay? And here I only have 2 minutes more. I don't want to do that. Okay. This is about farmers are in debt to traders, and the traders are women. Tractors, weedicide, threshing. This is old storage. We do a lot of apps. Okay, so this is the president of Ghana in Kumu, in the village, coming to look at what we do there. This is the former minister of Agric, also in Kumu, in our center. And this is a warehouse that the minister gave me for my work, okay? All right, so it's a 1,000 metric ton warehouse that the minister gave me because they like the research that we're doing, okay? We do land demarcation, so everything, anybody who has land in the Kumu area, that 3% of the land mass of Ghana, we digitize everything. Again, that's my office. That's my staff, okay? So I think my time is up, right? And so what is the moral of the story? What am I trying to say? Whatever you're doing as students, you guys are great. You're smart. You've got a great opportunity. Stay there, okay? Make the best of what you have. Become great in the area that you're in. And then in that area, find a way to give back. But keep your connections with the United States. Don't let anybody say you have to uproot and go and stay 100% in Africa. That makes no sense. Play to your advantages. What are your advantages? You're here. You know this place. You know where the grants are, okay? So that makes you different from everybody else. If you go there and you just plant yourself there, you're the same as the other 1.4 billion. And we already got 1.4 billion people doing their own stuff. Why do we need an extra one, right? Thank you for listening to me.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Prof. Yao. That was a very amazing, insightful, and informative session. My name is Oyin. I'm a Nigerian medical doctor, and I told my friend a few days ago that if I didn't study medicine, I would have studied economics, because in high school, it was a course that I really, really genuinely enjoyed and excelled in as well. And this presentation really resonates with me also because my mom is a farmer. Her father is also a farmer, and I also really love agriculture. So yeah, this was very, very amazing, really. I just want to know a little bit more about the museum project. I know you had mentioned it in passing, but I'm just curious to know a little bit more about it. And also, I know that you work with Africa House. I wanted to know if there is an element of Africa House maybe providing grants to farmers and agriculturists in this project. Thank you.
Next question.
Okay, all right. Can I just answer it quick? I'm just scared I'll forget. I'll make it very brief. I'm just scared I'll forget. Africa House gives funding to students. Apply to Africa House, look on the web. Most of the stuff that I do, I have external grants, okay? So that's how I do it, all right? So
we will send out information through the organization, so you have contact information about Africa House and from some of the speakers, etc. So we'll make sure we get that to Derek and, of course, Ken, so that we can share that.
Excellent. Museum project, same thing if you shoot me an email, but the idea is that other half of Africa in the rural areas, we want to showcase that because it's beautiful, okay? All the chieftaincy things, the staffs that they have, the masks and all of that, we want to tell that story, okay? So I've set up a museum complex, 3 or 4 buildings in different places. Email me if you want, Yao, Y-A-W, at nyu.edu, okay? So my first name is Yao, Y-A-W, means a man born on a Thursday, okay? So Yao at, your Ya, okay, with an Accra Wednesday, okay, all right? So send me that. Yep, YAW at nyu.edu. You're all welcome.
Hello, Professor Yao. My name is Taj Doso. You are sharing the story about the young man who was graduating and saying, I want to go back to Africa and help out. But you suggested he stay before you make that move. I'm in a similar position now. I'm very adamant about going back, and I don't see myself doing the most work here. Do you suggest I stay or find a way to go?
I don't know your history. I don't know anything about you, but just if you want to talk to me one-on-one, I'll tell you, but I feel very strongly about this. Those who leave too early are missing the opportunity of really helping Africa, okay? Get the best you can out of here first, okay? You know, become successful here. Get some skills here. Get the contacts here. Then you go and you'll be much more powerful, okay? All right? I want you to be, the stuff that you've seen me do, I want you to do it times 5 or 6 or 7, okay?
Yes.
All right, you promise me?
I promise.
Okay, all right.
Please give another round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I know that there were some other burning questions. Please use the email and contact Yao. And we're going to move to our next presenters. One is going to be presenting from Accra in Ghana, and the other will be presenting from NYU Abu Dhabi. So I'm going to read Frankie's bio, and then we'll get started. Can't do that with the glasses. Okay. Chike Frankie Endozien is a Nigerian-American writer and journalist. He is currently the director of New York University's Accra program. He has also directed New York University's Journalism's Institute in Ghana-based Reporting Africa program from 2008 to 2019, and he has honed his skills writing about a variety of cultural issues. He is the author of the 2017 book Lives of Great Men, a Lambda Literary Award winner, and Lives was also shortlisted for the Randy Schultz Award for Nonfiction in 2018 by the Publishing Triangle. He has spoken about themes of freedom, perseverance, and courage in lives and around the world in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, and of course in the United States. He is I would like to say he is also the founding member of Afro-Lit Sans Frontiers Festival, a virtual literary festival founded in South Africa, and with the curator, Zukuisa Weiner, as a response to the curfews and lockdowns related to the 2019 and 20 coronavirus. He is also the recipient of our Martin Luther King Jr. Faculty Award in 2017 for excellence, and while living in New York, he's an award-winning New York Post reporter for 15 years and a City Hall reporter from 1999 to 2008. Let me just also say this about Frankie. I don't know if you can see or hear me, Frankie, but you are a terrific partner. You know I love you, Frankie. I miss you. I can't wait to see you again. I'll see you in October in Ghana. And let me turn it over to Frankie Endozien.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. And I hope you all can hear me. I bring you very, very warm greetings from NYU Accra in Ghana. I want to first of all say thank you so much. I heard the keynote from Professor Renee Blake, just absolutely wonderful. And I just finished listening to the wonderful remarks from Professor Nyarko, who comes here, as he told you, ever so often. And just, Dr. Ullman, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for putting this together. And thank you to all of you who have come, including those of us who are joining on the live stream. It's always weird for me to hear my bio being read out, but I will just tell you a little bit about me that I don't think often makes the bio, and that would give you a sense of how I think and what I do. I was raised in a very, very large city. It's called Lagos in Nigeria. I had learned how to read from the newspapers that my parents brought home. So I've always been interested in words and how they affect people. I did not come to America until I was almost 20 years old, like everybody else, for university. And I had a career here, which I was lucky to have. But I've also had the good fortune of working in Europe and working in other places around the world, and having the knowledge that not only am I an African, Africa is really the best place for me. It's really the best place for me to put my energies. And as I have gotten older, and as I have been able to spread my wings, I have been able to find my home and my community in places outside of where I grew up. I love Nigeria. I love Lagos, but I'm very much at home in Johannesburg, very much at home in Nairobi, very much at home in Abidjan. And I live today in Ghana, thankfully, because of New York University's global footprint that allows me to work in a place where I've been coming to teach for years, and it is just wonderful for me. Having said that, I think one of the things that we have to, you have to decide for yourselves as you listen to all of us who have a few years on you by our grades and by our titles. The first thing I must say is that you have to make the decision that works for you, because what may work for me or what may have worked for me may be very different for what works for you. So I'm glad all of you are here to collect all of this information and chart your own path forward. I am an African, and I will always be an African wherever I go. I was an African when I lived in New York City full-time. I was an African when, as an undergraduate NYU student, I went to NYU Paris for study abroad for the very first time. And in this most European of cities, as I was learning French literature and all of this other stuff, I needed to get a haircut. I couldn't find a barbershop that would suit my needs. And so I ended up flagging somebody down, a brother on a motorcycle, and he took me to the 20th arrondissement, and I found my people. I found the Africans in France, and I was able to find my community. And that one summer experience, really, I could put a line through all the experiences I've had professionally. Because as a journalist, all I thought about was making sure that Africans in the diaspora and Africans on the continent were able to get their voices heard through my pen or my camera. And I think that whatever discipline you're in, whatever contribution that you think you can make, no matter how small, it is very helpful if you really center who you are in it. So if you're an African student, by all means, be African and let that filter its way in the way that you do your things. I'm also somebody who's rather pragmatic. And I'm so glad that we were able to hear from Professor Nyarko first, because he's an economist and we can think about the value of economic development. Initially, I was thinking about what I could say to all of us about remittances and the fact that if you are able to earn in a world currency across the world, you're able to change lives by simply sending money home or to friends or to people that are in your chosen family on our continent. That, I think, is a wonderful thing to do. But I also think that we, as Africans, wherever we find ourselves, have to always be able to hold up the mirror to ourselves and see clearly what it is that we're doing and how we look like. It is not okay for us to say, I'm sending all this money home and not to demand responsibility for it. It is not okay to say, I live in America or I live in the West, and whatever is going on there is going on there because I am a student. When I was an undergraduate student at NYU, one of the things that was happening in my country was that we were going through a very, very bad dictatorship. And there was a freedom fighter who was a woman named Kudirat Abiola. And she was married to a presidential candidate who got locked up, and his name was MKO Abiola. And he got locked up when the whole country and everybody who actually participated in the democratic movement that year knew that he had won the election, but it was denied from him. And so those of us who were young people or younger people, students in the diaspora, we had to be able to do something. And I was very, very proud of the people in my generation at that time who decided that in New York City, you can actually speak up and you can petition the government. And once Kudirat Abiola was killed, we were able to petition the people who run New York City, the mayor, the city council, to have a street named after her. Now, this was a woman that was murdered and was considered persona non grata. And till today, actually till tomorrow, if you visit the Nigerian embassy, right next to it is a sign that says Kudirat Abiola Place. At that time, it was a slap in the face of the Nigerian government because they had been accused of killing this woman. But guess what? There was nothing they could do about it. They could shut people up inside the country. They could turn off the internet. They could do all kinds of things to people. But outside, the Nigerian community in New York City that was filled with young people were able to take a stand and say, this person needs to be honored. And those people who represent the dictatorial government have to walk into the office every single day and see the name of the person they killed. And so even if you can't hold people accountable, we must never, ever, ever, ever shrink and not have our voices heard, especially those of us who are privileged to have one foot outside the continent. If we're going to hold the mirror up to ourselves, even if we're young people, we have to be able to advocate for good governance back home. Being an undergraduate student or a master's student or any kind of student who lives abroad does not mean that you should forfeit your right to demanding that your country or your countries do better. I am a Nigerian, but I really, really wish that I could have an African Union passport because I feel very connected to many countries on our continent and I want them to do better. I also feel like if I'm to hold up the mirror to myself, then I cannot be silent when things are happening in our countries and when there is any kind of criticism, our knee-jerk reaction is to say, this is a Western conspiracy against us. A few months ago in Uganda, there was an anti-homosexuality bill that was passed that called for the death penalty. The World Bank responded by saying that they were going to withhold millions and millions and millions in loans from the country because it did not align with their human rights. And we have seen that monetary lending has always been used, or at least in recent time has been used to push not just anti-poverty, but you can't have anti-poverty if you leave women behind. You can't have anti-poverty programs work if you leave marginalized populations behind. And so when the World Bank does something like this, and we in Africa write editorials, or we say things like, this is the West trying to impose things on us, it is up to us to say, no. Everyone who is born on the African continent, whether you're born rich or you're born poor, whether you are born an albino or not, whether you're born from a major tribe or not, the continent belongs to all of us. And if we don't take the time to take care of ourselves, first, we have no right to go and beg for money from others and then complain about the conditions they impose on us. I've been given a warning that I have just a few more minutes. So I'm going to wrap up, and I hope that I can discuss more of the things that I wanted to say with you in the question and answer. Be the change that you want to see. No one size fits all of us. If you want to go home, I would suggest that you think about making it work for you. There are people who do amazingly well with 1 foot planted on the continent and 1 foot planted elsewhere. My charge to you is that wherever you go, be it the African that you want to be, and don't let the continent be divorced from you because there are problems. Problems are never solved by ignoring them. And it is very easy to become Western, to become solely American or solely British or solely European, if all your energy is in the place that has given you this magnificent education, right? It's very easy to become that. On the other hand, you could be all of those things and still come home and do amazing things. So with that, I would like to say thank you for giving me a few minutes to talk to you. Let us be our sisters' keepers, and let us be our brothers' keepers. And I look forward to taking any questions.
We will take questions now.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. So my name's Otwozi, and I am actually I'm actually Nigerian too. I was born in Lagos, but grew up in America. So you talked about MKO. So interestingly enough, I'm reading this book, I'm finishing this book right now called The Fisherman by Chigozie Obioma. I don't know if you've heard of that book.
I have.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, in the book they talk about the political situation in Nigeria at the time of the election, and then MKO's death, and then tied to a personal tragedy story. So I just wanted to ask a little bit more for you to talk about your experiences with seeing that happen in Nigeria, because my dad, who was also a journalist too, by the way, he was actually the managing director of the Daily Times back in the day, but he talked about that situation being the impetus for deciding that he wanted us to leave Nigeria. It wouldn't happen until years later, but he talked about that situation. So if you could just talk a bit more about your experiences with that turmoil.
Sure. And thank you very much for your question, and thank you for bringing that up. During the time that I was growing up in Lagos, in fact, one of the deciding, one of the crystal moments for me where I realized that journalism was a path that I was going to try. We had a Nigerian journalist, and he was part of a quartet of people who formed a publication called Newswatch. His name was Delegiwa, and he was a freedom fighter. And at a certain point, he got killed. He got a letter sent to his home. He opened it. It was a letter bomb, and he was killed for his work. I remember very clearly at that time understanding that journalism was a dangerous profession, but I also knew that there was a bigger calling. Delegiwa died for Africa. He died for Nigeria. It is unfortunate that his family had to make the ultimate sacrifice. But at the same time, he lived a bigger life. And so when I became a journalist, I actually, at the time that that happened, I was still quite young, but I knew my neighbors and many other families were thinking of how they could leave the country, right? And so your parents were probably in that boat and having crystallized that this place is too hot for us, we have to leave. Now, that was back in 86, 85, I believe. We are so many years away from that. It does not mean, as I say, when you hold the mirror up to yourself, that our countries are perfect. But it does not mean that we should leave them alone. We will have no other place. We will have no other home, right? The continent is ours, whether we live in it or not. And I think that for us who are African people, we have to make that commitment that regardless of the difficulty of democracy, and it is a very difficult thing to have. It is not an easy thing to have peaceful transitions of power. It is not an easy thing to have free and fair and honest election. I mean, you all are sitting in America and you know how difficult it is over there, much less those of us in Africa who have only been doing this since the 1960s. But it is worth fighting for. An egalitarian society where everybody is treated fairly and everybody is given the chance, it's worth fighting for. And that's where you come in as the next generation, as people who have been educated in the West, as people who understand these things, is to tell those you left behind and work with us to make our systems better. Because we may be at home in London, Paris, New York, but we're also at home in Lagos, Joburg, Nairobi, Abidjan, Dakar. These are our places, and we have to fight to make them stronger because they belong to us first before they belong to anyone else. So yes, many of us had this traumatic experience of having people killed and people dying, but I think at the end of the day, the generations that follow have to honor that sacrifice of our parents and grandparents by making sure that our commitment to the continent is unwavering, regardless of what anybody says. It's unwavering, and we should be there, and we should not stop going, and we should always come. So thank you so much for the question.
Thank you so much, Frankie. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for the discussion, and we will follow up with you. Again, let's give Frankie and Endozien a round of applause. All right, our next speaker is Fatiah Touray. Fatiah Touray Esquire is responsible for leading and directing New York University's Abu Dhabi programs that promote inclusion, diversity, and equity and belonging. She works in partnership with Spiritual Life and Intercultural Education, the Office of the Provost, and of course students and faculty across NYU, AD, and of course NYU writ large, and we have many global sites. Fatiah comes back to NYU Abu Dhabi from Sarah Lawrence College, where she was the inaugural vice president for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and where she also served as the special assistant to the president. Previously, she was the assistant dean of diversity and international advising and the director of our academic achievement program in the College of Arts and Sciences at NYU. She brings a deep commitment to global equity, inclusion, diversity, and belonging to all of her work. Her philosophy on inclusion and belonging aligns with a proverb from her native Gambia, quote, "If your only tool is a hammer, you will see every problem as a nail," end quote. Diversity work for her is approached from an anti-deficit model and really starting with thinking about how do we approach it from an advantage-based model. She believes that the positive intersection of this work aligns with organizational excellence and, of course, true inclusion. Fatiah, as you know, it's a pleasure to work with you and to be in partnership with you. Thank you for staying awake and all of that in Abu Dhabi. We're so appreciative, and I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Dr. Coleman and Dr. Blake, two of my favorite sheroes, as I like to call them, in terms of really leading a pathway for me to do this work, but also just being wonderful mentors to me. And definitely want to thank Frankie as well, and Yao, and everyone else who's here. So I've been thinking a lot, and I had this whole talk prepared, and I'm going to completely divert from that because I want to set a little bit of a context in terms of who I am and how I actually returned to being an African. So for me, I was born and raised in the Bronx to a working class Gambian parents, and I learned English at about 7 years old. And for most of you, who English is a second or third language. For me, it wasn't until I started remembering my dreams in English, I was like, oh, I really speak English. Like I've mastered the English language. And it's interesting because I still, even when I have to speak, I still think, oh, how do I sound? How does my English sound? But one of the things that we learn is that there are multiple Englishes, right, that exist. And one of the things that I'm grateful for, and this is the connection in terms of the diaspora, is that I was able to attend NYU in New York through the Higher Education Opportunities Program. Some of you may be familiar with HEOP program or EOP programs. These are access programs that really started after the Civil Rights Movement of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and then the Civil Rights Act of 1968 that really started a lot of the affirmative action programs and that have kind of led to the moment that we're in now. I also like to cite that because I also like to cite the Immigration Act of 1968. And the Immigration Acts allowed for a lot of us who are Africans who were born in America or who were able to come to the United States, whose parents were able to come to the United States. And so oftentimes when we have these kind of diaspora wars where we're talking about the differences between African Americans and Africans, I think one of the things that I'm always thankful for is that if it wasn't for the contributions and the achievements of African Americans fighting for civil rights in the country, in order to have programs like this that many of us benefit from, that allowed us to have access to college, that also allowed for our families to come to the United States, I think there is some shared community and some shared understanding that should happen, whether it's for Africans that are born in the States or whether it's for Caribbeans as well, right? What are the ways in which, you know, we continue to kind of divide the diaspora instead of coming together? And so for me, during NYU gave me a lot of opportunities. And it was actually the first time I had an opportunity to visit Africa and to visit Gambia. I was an Africana Studies major and I was working on my honors thesis. And I think back and almost in a shameful way to the ways in which I was so scared to go to the continent for the first time as an African, right? As a child born to Africans, right? And if I can think back and think if I have that experience, you know, growing up in that culture, what is that experience like for others? You know, what were the messages that I was given that allowed me to believe in terms of this unknown land, even though I was raised in my culture? And so 3 things that I quickly want to touch on, because I know you have a lot of questions, and I know Frankie has stayed on, so that we can also, if there is any time, engage in some conversation around these topics, is I want to talk a little bit about the colonial hangover, right? And the impact that has had on Africans, on our psyche, right? The role of the brain drain, which all 3 of us have touched on, and we all have different viewpoints on that, as well as the role of African descendants or African descendants in the global community. And so one of the things that I often ground the diversity work in, that I do here in Abu Dhabi, or just when we talk about diversity in a global context, is I talk a lot about colonialism and the impact that it left. not only when we talk about the resources that were taken from Africa, but the mark that it has left on the African psyche, the mark that it has left on us in terms of the ways in which we have been taught to believe that the West is superior. And even as educated folks, right, the ways in which it continues to still impact us, in the ways in which we think about what is our place in Africa. And I'm so glad that Frankie touched on that and touched on those points in terms of, the ways in which, and Yao talked on this, right? Some of the economic dependencies that have resulted as a result of colonialism, or even if we think about some of the political instability in terms of the ways in which lands were restructured. And so when I actually think about the Return to Africa movement, or thinking about the opportunities, it brings joy to my heart. I mean, I did many of the trips with Dr. Blake, where we took students back to Ghana. And when we think about the fact that in Ghana currently, since 2019, there have been at least 1,500 African Americans that have moved to Ghana, following a campaign by the Ghanaian government, right, in terms of the year of the return. And I think about my own country, the Gambia, which is very much the Senegambia region. If you think about the legacy of the slave trade, I know a lot of times, people can tie the roots of where slaves were taken from, but a lot of the slaves that were taken from the Senegambia region ended up in the Louisiana, Mississippi area in the United States. And so one of the things that we have in the Gambia is this Roots Festival. And many of you may have been familiar or may be familiar with Alex Haley and the groundbreaking book and film Roots. And Alex Haley, through looking at his history, he tied his roots back to Gambia. And it's the home of Kunta Kinte, which many of you may be familiar with. And so since 1994, every other year, the government has had this annual Roots Festival, where it's really a call for African Americans, for Africans in the diaspora, to come back to the Gambia, to go to James Island, which is where we have our slave ports, and to visit the home of the last living relatives of Kunta Kinte, as well as to really explore and have that kind of movement of the ways in which we are connected in the diaspora. And so one of the things that I think is key and that Frankie touched on is the role that we have as African descendants in the global African community, the ways in which we can invest back in Africa, the ways in which we can live in Africa. Renee talked about raising her daughter and the confidence that it instilled in her, the ways in which our skills that we have, that we don't necessarily have to only build the skills in America or in London or in France, but that we can also bring back our skills to the continent, and not just from sending money home, but the ways in which we can have impact and really have ownership of that. And not just for us who are first generation, but for all Africans, anyone who is an African descendant. And so that is something that I'm very passionate about. I think that my time may be up. So I'm going to stop there to see if people have any questions. But it really warms my heart to see this happen, to see you all in the crowd, to have a conference like this, because I only imagine if we had conferences like this, and I'm thinking to 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, to my, 19, 20-year-old self, what more I could have done. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dekendra Dazzle. And my question for you is, what was your journey to getting where you are now in your profession and being in Abu Dhabi, right? What was your journey to getting there, and how did you know that, like, this is where you wanted to be?
Okay. It's a long journey, but I'm gonna, it always sounds neat and clean, but it wasn't neat and clean. I came to NYU as an undergraduate student, and I was either gonna be doctor, lawyer, engineer, doctor, lawyer, engineer, or something in business. That was the definition of success. I love math, but I could not even stand the smell of a hospital. And so I had to quickly change from the pre-med track. But I loved teaching. I loved education. My first actual career, I was a high school math teacher in Brooklyn. Loved it. But then that kicks in, doctor, lawyer, engineer. So everyone was like, you're too smart to be a teacher. I mean, I think about it now. Don't we need smart teachers? So I ended up going to law school, which was great because it was also a passion of mine. I went to the Howard University School of Law. I'm very proud, HBCU graduate as well. And I quickly knew within my first year that was not it for me, but not a quitter. Went through with it, had to make that money, right? And that's one of the things that I would say. I was driven by money at first, but if you follow your passion, the money will come. And so after a stint in law, I wanted to transition back into education. And so there was an opportunity for me to come to NYU. I started out as an academic advisor, and I quickly got promoted to an assistant director in the College of Arts and Science, and then to an assistant dean. And then from there, continue on to my path. As Lisa mentioned, I went to Sarah Lawrence, and where I was the inaugural vice president for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I've always talked about we are all intersectional beings, right? For me, as a Black African Muslim woman, there are many dimensions to me, to myself. And so the opportunity to do this diversity, equity, and inclusion work in a global context really stood out to me. And so I've been here now in Abu Dhabi, going on 3 years doing this incredible work. In fact, myself, Dr. Coleman, and Dr. Blake have been doing some amazing work. Some of them, they left this out of some of the many things they do, but we do a lot of work on colorism across global lines, right? The ways in which colorism not only impacts, us as Africans or as Americans or as Latinos or as South Asians, but just really the ways in which the manifestations of colorism across global lines and how it's rooted in the anti-Blackness. And so we have an opportunity to do a lot of amazing projects here, but that is a short story of a very long story in terms of how I've gotten here to Abu Dhabi.
Hello, my name is Santana Kavanaugh. I'm actually from Kentucky. So I'm an African-American descendant of enslaved people, but I believe I've been a Pan-Africanist since before I knew of the concept. And I really like what you were saying earlier about, the unification of the African diaspora. And I just wanted to know, in your opinion, how do you think people in the African diaspora living in the United States can be working together to combat white supremacy and colonialism, not only in the United States, but in African nations especially?
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful question, and I think it's one of the things that I really work on a lot in terms of the stories that we've been told about each other, right? I think with a lot of the stories that Africans have been told coming to America about African Americans, right? What are some of those stereotypes that we have, and even in terms of thinking about some of the ways in which, African Americans may think about, Africans based on some of the stories that have been told and passed down. I think one of the things that we need to do is really kind of cut through all of that and seeing the commonalities that we have within each other, but also seeing the ways in which that if we are united, how much stronger that is and why they want to keep us divided. As I stated 2 examples of 2 countries that are welcoming, right? That are open to African Americans, right? And so not believing that hype, and I'm told I need to wrap it up. So I'm going to wrap it up really quickly, but knowing that Africa is for you, right? And that there are places and spaces that welcome you, that are actually excited for that, and vice versa. But I'll stop there because I don't want to go over time. But no, thank you for that, and thank you for continuing to have that Pan-African ethos within the ways in which you move about. So thank you.
And it's from Abu Dhabi. Let's give Fatiah Touray another round of applause.